Yo, what's up, guys? Hey, today I wanted to go ahead and talk about how to overcome that friction. Friction is something that we all have to deal with during our recovery and shoot, even in our lives. I was watching a science documentary, docuseries type thing, and it talked about how energy overcomes friction. Think about that just for a moment. The energy that you put into something will overcome that friction. That can be applied in two different ways, but I'm hoping to go ahead and make sure that it is applied in a positive way for you. I know that we have talked about how friction eliminates motion, but I also want to give you an opportunity on how to overcome that friction, and that's by putting energy into it. There is the study of tribology, I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm not really big on science, but it is the study of how two materials rubbing against each other and how that can cause energy. Well, they have to be rubbing, that's the first thing. So there has to be some sort of motion there. Guys, whenever we're dealing with the friction in our lives, whenever we're dealing with the friction or a road bump or a hurdle that we have to overcome in our recovery, you gotta put energy into it. You can't just be idle. You have to go ahead and know that the energy that you're putting in must be towards something positive, which is hopefully your recovery. And it also has to go ahead and be something that will get some sort of movement. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in a gym or if you've had, something break down on you where the two parts just aren't working together. For my example here, I just want to talk about nuts and bolts. I've expressed that I have done construction in my life. One of the hardest things for me was trying to get the bolts unscrewed that have been sitting in there for 10, 15 plus years. Some people would put Coca-Cola on it just to see if it reduces the friction between the bolt head and whatever it was attached to. What I found was very interesting, guys, and this is where I really want to highlight today, is that what it took was a lot of energy just to get a small little motion. But once that motion engaged, that nut and bolt started to become easier to unscrew. I'll apply that to your recovery. It's going to take a lot of energy to get that first step of acknowledging that you have a problem and that your life has become unmanageable. It takes a lot of energy, and I know that because I've been there. I was in denial for so long that I was a heroin addict. I was in denial for so long that I was an alcoholic, that it took a lot of energy for me to actually recognize, okay, Nico, you do struggle with these things. But after that energy was put into it, and specifically with heroin, once I started to go ahead and head down the path of recovery, that large amount of energy that I put just to step on that path continued to go ahead and be easier and easier down the road. Well, by no means am I saying that it gets easier immediately or that there's a specific time frame that it gets easier, because it's different for each one of us. But what I will tell you is that it does become easier. Just like when we're unscrewing a bolt that has been there for a long time. Shoot, let's go ahead and make it even more relevant. Look at your car. If you've had a flat, one of the first things that you'll see someone doing is put the crowbar on there and start jumping on it, at least from my own experience, because those things are screwed on tight. It takes a lot of energy to get that first break, is what it's called. That first little nudge of motion that goes in the right way. But once you get that first one, it becomes easier and easier and easier. I'm not saying that the task is done, just like with your car and the spare tire and a flat tire. Same thing with the nuts and bolts inside of a home. The whole project isn't done by just getting that one bolt out, but the motion is put into place that it can go ahead and continue to be built up, broken down, or modeled, whatever it is. Same thing with your vehicle, your flat tire. Now, once you go ahead and break that bolt from where it's at, it becomes easier to unscrew that bolt there so that you could start to get the task of swapping out your tire completed. Ideally, guys, what I want you to take from this is that it takes a lot of energy to get motion going. But once you start getting motion going, it becomes easier and easier. My job is not to do recovery for you. Don't want to either. My job is to be a little bit of a guide here on some tools and tips and tricks that I know that I've put into place in my life that have helped me out. So I'm hoping that they'll help you out. Because being stuck in the drug world means that you're so fucked up, or you're so messed up, or you're so high that you're stuck in place. You can't move, your body doesn't move, so you're stuck. If you stay stuck, guys, you get stuck in a grave. But if you start putting that energy into breaking free from being stuck, you start to build the motion of recovery, and that motion becomes easier and easier, so that ultimately you can live a life, your full task of living a life of sobriety and cleanness becomes a little bit easier each day. We already do enough damage to ourselves by becoming active addiction and being stuck in addiction. You're already using energy that way, guys. Might as well use that energy and put it into something that will give you a better motion, a perpetual motion that's going to lead towards a life that's a lot easier and a lot more fulfilling and being strung out. I learned all this, guys, because I recognize that I have no halo, and that's okay.